morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, holy shamoli, what a dramatic last 24 hours. Wow, this is one for the ages and for the history books. So, yesterday at about 6:30 p.m., it's just a little bit, it was actually a little bit more than that, but just maybe about 90 minutes prior to President Trump's 8 p.m. self-imposed deadline that he would wipe out Iran's civilization, obliterate their entire civilian infrastructure, their bridges, their civilian power plants. Guess what? As I said on X, and I want to repeat it right now, Trump's threat worked. There's no question that him being so apocalyptic, so colorful, so menacing, so dire in his threat clearly had a psychological impact on the mullahs and the Iranian, what's left of the Iranian leadership, because, as I said, just about maybe 80 minutes to be exact before 8 p.m., President Trump announced on Truth Social a 2-week ceasefire has been agreed to by both the United States and the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so here is now the absolute latest. President Trump now has called off all military strikes on Iran. We are no longer, for now, at war with the mullahs. In exchange, we have a 2-week ceasefire. It is as Trump said, a double-sided ceasefire. Iran then came out and said they have stopped all military operations as well. So as things stand right now, there is no fighting whatsoever. Israel has agreed as well to stop bombing Iran for 2 weeks. So we have a 2-week ceasefire. Pending, it is subject, as Trump said, to the complete, immediate, and safe reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Now, this is the key point. The Iranian foreign minister, who in many ways is speaking for the regime in these negotiations, issued a statement that they will abide by a 2-week ceasefire, that they will stop all military attacks and operations, and that they will reopen the Strait of Hormuz. However, under a key condition, that it remains under the control of the Iranian Navy, or what's left of it, and the Iranian military. In other words, you have to ask Iran for permission for your ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz. It has to be under their permission and with their guidance and coordination. They're not going to charge a toll. They're not going to charge a transit fee, as they've been doing now for the last 4 or 5 weeks of the war. But they will allow ships to go through. But the Iranians are making it crystal clear it is under their control and their supervision. Now, it appears the key mediator was Pakistan, and the Prime Minister of Pakistan and the military leader of Pakistan. And they apparently, working both with the American side and with the Iranian side, are now setting up peace negotiations whereby on Friday in the capital of Islamabad, an American delegation and an Iranian delegation are scheduled to meet, in which they will hammer out, and as Trump put it, finalize and consummate a final end deal, a permanent agreement, as Trump said, long-term, between us and Iran. At the heart of this now basis for this negotiations is a 10-point plan issued by Iran. Iran, basically, we sent them a 15-point plan. Iran looked at it and then sent back a 10-point plan. Trump then said, this is workable. We're not going to accept everything, obviously, but this is something workable for us to iron out any differences between us and hammer out a final deal. In other words, a permanent peace agreement. So the question now is, we have a ceasefire. It is to me crystal clear that Trump's threat of annihilating Iran, especially their infrastructure, played a tremendous incentive role in the mullah saying, you know what, we've got two choices in front of us. We can either have a ceasefire, hammer out some kind of a peace agreement, temporarily at least reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or we can face the mother of all beatings, the mother of all bombardments. And so some of the saner elements of the regime said, yeah, let's do a deal. Now, let me just say this before I even begin to talk about the 10 points. I do not trust the mullahs. And I hope that you don't trust the mullahs. And more importantly, that Trump and his negotiators don't trust the mullahs. Because they will lie, they will delay, they will kick the can down the road, they will play games. Because what this ceasefire does is it enables the mullahs now to reload, to reset, to rearm. They're a master at this. They're a master at playing games. They've been doing this now for decades and decades, playing with people who come in, weapons inspectors, nuclear inspectors. They're always playing games. And of course, it gives their allies, Russia and China, the time to send in more weapons so that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, if they want to resume fighting, will have a fresh arsenal to be able to attack and try to defend the Strait of Hormuz and other key positions. So my advice to the American side is, don't trust them as far as you can throw them. This ceasefire, whether it's good or bad, the devil is in the details. Now, let's start getting into the details. We don't know all of it, but we're starting to know some of it. Iran now says, and Trump appears to have conceded, that Iran will be a nuclear power. Not with a nuclear weapon. Iran yesterday publicly came out and Trump reposted it on his Truth Social, that Iran will not seek or possess nuclear weapons, which on paper is a victory. But they've been saying this literally for 25 years. So this is nothing new. But on paper, they're now willing to say they will never possess or own or pursue a nuclear bomb. However, they have a right to enrich uranium, which they are standing by, and most importantly, that they can have a civilian nuclear program. Trump says, yes, you can have the right to enrichment and you can have the right to a civilian nuclear program. Furthermore, the Iranians want all sanctions lifted on Iran so that they can trade, sell their oil, sell everything else that they have to the international market and come out from underneath the punishing sanctions regime. Trump has told them yes. And this is the key point. Iran says after this ceasefire and after this final peace deal, once it's done, they must now retain significant control and influence over the Strait of Hormuz. They did not have it before the war. Before the war, any ship could pass. It was full, free navigation. Iran is insisting, like the Suez Canal, that those who run the Suez, that they have the right to impose a tolling system, and transit fees on all oil tankers and cargo ships going through. They say that this will help them generate $500 billion, that's with a B, $500 billion a year in revenue that they say they need to rebuild their broken and shattered country. In exchange for all of this, they promise not to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles. They promise not to fund terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. And they are willing to sign a final permanent peace agreement between us, Israel, and the United States. And so, my question to you, do you support Trump's decision for a 2-week ceasefire? Okay, do you support this deal, this 2-week ceasefire, and what is now appearing to be the contours, I'm just using the term coming from President Trump himself, of a 10-point plan that has been put on the table by the Iranians for a final settlement? And I think this is now the key question. So they're going to start negotiations literally in 2 days in Islamabad. They're already working behind the scenes. And so let me tell exactly, just so that I want to give you all the information you need, and then we'll have a really good spirited discussion, hopefully, with the best audience in the business. So, by the way, just so that you know, oil prices, plunged after the announcement of the ceasefire. It went down 14%. It was at $115 a barrel. It went below $100 a barrel. Stock markets surged. So price of oil is already starting to come down quickly. Now, just people are asking the Kuhner man, well, Jeff, what's your initial reaction to this? Look, you know my position. I did not want us to bomb the civilian infrastructure of Iran. I did not want that to do that. I did not want us to do that. Forgive me. This now spares us doing that. I don't want us to bomb electrical power plants, take out the lights, the electricity. This is going to affect hospitals, people in hospitals, babies in hospitals, running water. It could have led to a serious humanitarian refugee crisis. And I believe we would have lost the Iranian people for hundreds of years to come because they would ultimately blame us. So I'm happy that Trump made this move. Forget the deal. I'm just talking about the ceasefire, that he did not follow through on his, vow to obliterate Iran. So I think this is a great move on his part, not the deal, but the decision not to bomb. I think it is a great decision. I think it's the right decision. It spares countless civilian lives, number one. And number two, contrary to what many people are saying, I think his threats did bring the Ayatollahs to the table and probably were instrumental in giving that final push for them to come to their senses and try to, have a negotiated peace and a negotiated settlement. So I think on those two counts, I think what Trump did was, to me, admirable, truly admirable on both sides. I know he didn't want to bomb civilians. I know he didn't want to bomb the infrastructure. I know it was weighing on his conscience tremendously. And, in the end, the decency of Donald Trump prevailed. Now, that all being said, this is what President Trump announced on Truth Social yesterday. And so he's referring to the Pakistani prime minister and their top military leader. Based on conversations with Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir of Pakistan, wherein they requested that I hold off the destructive force being sent tonight to Iran and subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. This will be a double-sided ceasefire. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives. So according to Trump, it's mission accomplished. I'll repeat it again. The reason for doing so is that we have already met and exceeded all military objectives and are very far along with a definitive agreement concerning long-term peace with Iran and peace in the Middle East. And this is the part now about the 10-point proposal from the Iranians. We received a 10-point proposal from Iran and believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate. Almost all of the various points of past contention have been agreed to between the United States and Iran, but a 2-week period will allow the agreement to be finalized and consummated. On behalf of the United States of America, as president and also representing the countries of the Middle East, it is an honor to have this long-term problem close to resolution. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Now, Iran has, as I said, they have accepted the ceasefire announced by Trump. In fact, not only did they accept it, they put it up on an X post, which Trump reposted on his own Truth Social account. So, we have a 2-week ceasefire. What I'm going to do next before I take calls, and I promise I will take calls very quickly, is this. I'm going to give out a ledger. What Iran is going to get and what the United States is going to get. And then I want to ask all of you, was A, the war worth it in the end? And B, should the United States go ahead and sign this deal? Okay, we now have a 2-week ceasefire and potentially a peace deal that will end the war between us, Israel, and Iran. President Trump this morning has come out with a Truth Social saying that, quote, yesterday was a, quote, big day for world peace. He went on to say that this deal, if consummated, will make the Middle East great again. It will be a golden age, not just for the United States, but he said a golden age for Iran and a golden age for everyone living in the Middle East. Now, at the core of the deal, in terms of the Iranian side, they will have control over the Strait of Hormuz. That is a massive concession that they have now extracted from Trump. Plus, they will have the right to a nuclear program. Not nuclear weapons, but a nuclear program. So I've simplified it for you. Here is how it's going to break down. This is what Iran gets. Number one, the deal recognizes the mullahs and the regime stays in power. They stay intact and they survive. So there is no regime change. The mullahs will continue to rule over Iran. So they survive. Number two, as I've mentioned, they have a right to a nuclear program. So they will keep a civilian nuclear energy program. They will also have the right to enrich uranium. Now, I believe we're going to be processing the uranium and then we're going to be giving it to the mullahs so we can control the percentage, the degree. In other words, it can only go up to, say, 20% instead of 90%, which is weapons grade. But they will have the right to civilian nuclear program, a right to a nuclear program, and they will also have the right to enrich uranium. All economic sanctions, all international sanctions will be lifted off of the regime and lifted off of Iran. So this means they will be able to sell oil, petrochemicals, steel, to anyone around the world uninhibited, unencumbered. So Iran will now become a full-fledged member, partner of the international community of nations. This is going to be huge because now they're going to sell as much oil as they want. They're limited now to how much oil they can sell. They have a quota. They can't exceed that quota. Now they could sell millions and millions and millions of barrels of oil a day. They say that is necessary for them to, again, rebuild their country, rebuild their economy, and rebuild their military. Finally, they will have control and influence over the Strait of Hormuz. And they will be allowed to have a transit system, or a transit tolling system, to be more accurate, where they will charge a transit fee on ships and cargo going through, especially from these wealthy oil-producing nations in the Persian Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain. And they say this will generate for them about $500 billion a year just in toll fees, which they also say is necessary in order to reconstruct and rebuild their country and their military. So, if you look at it from Iran's point of view, and that's why on Iranian state media and across Iran yesterday, they were celebrating on the streets, they were holding rallies, saying that as far as they're concerned, they have now won. They believe they've won. A, the regime survives. B, they keep their nuclear program. C, they have something they did not have before, which is control and influence over the Strait of Hormuz, and all sanctions will be lifted. Plus, with the right to enrich uranium. So, as far as they're concerned, when they go into the negotiations on Friday, now they're going to have more cards to play with, more leverage as they hammer out a final deal. Because what they now know is that they can hurt Trump by closing the Strait of Hormuz. That they have found the Achilles heel in the West, on our side. We are vulnerable to the strait. We are vulnerable to the oil, natural gas, and fertilizer that goes through there. And if Iran shuts it down, they can impose immense pain and punishment. So this is what the Iranians are going to get. What does the United States get? No nuclear weapons. Iran will agree in a treaty to have no nuclear weapons. Now, to be fair, they've been saying no nukes now for 25 years. So I don't know how much of a concession it is, but at least on paper, we will have them saying they will not be able to pursue or possess nuclear weapons. Their ballistic missile supply has been badly degraded in this 40-day war. There's no question. The nuclear weapons program, whatever remnants there were, has been utterly wiped out. Khamenei is dead. The political leadership of Iran has been absolutely decapitated. The military objectives, both nuclear and ballistic, have been achieved, plus Iran's navy, its air force, and its military have been absolutely shattered and destroyed. Iran, for years, will not be able to project power or menace or threaten their neighbors. And for now, the Strait of Hormuz will be unblocked. And going into the future, if countries pay a fee, it will remain unblocked. So, yeah, it's going to add to the cost of oil. It's going to add to the cost of energy because every cargo ship is going to be, passing on those costs to consumers. But at least the oil and the energy that we get, that the world gets from the Persian Gulf is now going to be accessible to the world again. So this is what we get. We get a regime that is neutered, that is wounded, that at least in the near future, for at least a good 5, 6, 7 years, will not have the ability to build a bomb and will not have the ability to really fund terrorist groups or to pose a threat to the region or to Europe or to the world. To me, there is one massive question that needs to be resolved. And that is the issue that took us to war in the first place. If you remember, what was the casus belli? The casus belli was that, according to President Trump and the war hawks who advocated for him to launch Operation Epic Fury, Lindsey Graham, Benjamin Netanyahu, General Jack Keane, his Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, those people who told him, let's do this. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity to hit the mullahs and hit them as hard as anybody's ever hit them, was that the enriched uranium that the Iranians possessed after the bombing of 8 months ago, buried under the rubble underneath these mountains, 60% enriched uranium, that the mullahs could grab that enriched uranium and quickly convert it or upgrade it to 90% uranium, which would then give them the ability to build 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 nuclear bombs. In other words, that was the imminent threat, which they say compelled this war. That enriched uranium is still in the ground underneath the rubble in Iran. The Iranians have said, you're not getting it back. They're not allowing to have us come in and extract it or seize it. They are saying it's theirs. They have a right to hold it. President Trump is saying, we want it. This is going to be the biggest unresolved issue that they're going to have to negotiate and iron out at the peace talks in Pakistan in a couple days. Now, we don't have that enriched uranium. If we don't get the enriched uranium, then I'll be honest with you, this war was for nothing. If we get the enriched uranium, okay, let me ask you really, I think, the two key questions. Number one, based upon the 2-week ceasefire and now the 10-point plan that Trump now said is the, quote, workable basis for a final long-term agreement, who do you think won the war? The United States or Iran? Both sides are claiming victory. I'll be honest with you. I think both sides can legitimately claim victory. I think Trump can legitimately say we got a lot that he wanted to get done. The biggest one is, Iran's nuclear program, weapons program is, beyond obliterated. And Iran's military has been absolutely decimated. And they no longer pose a threat for at least a generation to their neighbors, to Europe, and to the world. So he has set back their nuclear ballistic program for at least 10 to 15 years. And I think that, he can clearly, and now the Strait of Hormuz has been reopened. So oil prices will start coming down and we avert a potential global recession, if not a depression. So I think he can say, look, we came in there and we beat the living daylights out of them. So, and in terms of denying them a nuke, mission accomplished. The Iranians can plausibly say, the mullahs, our regime survives. We get the right to have a nuclear program. And now we have control and the sanctions get lifted, all of them. And we have the right to control the Strait of Hormuz, or at least to charge a toll. In other words, we're in a stronger position in the Strait because we had no influence there. For hundreds of years, they had no influence on the Strait of Hormuz. Now they can legitimately say every ship has to pay us a fee. And they're looking at, as I said, $500 billion a year in revenue. So that's why on Iranian state media, they're saying this is a big victory for them. So both sides are claiming victory. Who do you think ultimately won the war? Secondly, should Trump have agreed to a ceasefire? And now obviously negotiations for a final settlement? Or should he have followed through on his threat to obliterate Iran's civilian infrastructure? Has he stopped short of finishing the job? 617-266-6868. And that enriched uranium, it's still sitting there in the ground inside Iran. If we don't get it back, was the war worth it? 617-266-6868. Okay, lines are loaded. Andrea on the South Shore, you're going to start us off. Andrea, thanks for holding and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi.
I don't quite know how to do this because I'm a huge Trump supporter. I voted for him 3 times. I've called you many times over the years. But I'm sitting here this morning wondering what the heck just happened. If I recall correctly, and I know you've been trying to put a positive spin on it, I'm gonna be like Grace this morning and kind of be devil's advocate a little bit. At the very beginning, what did Trump say? This is for the Iranian people. This is for regime change. And about, 20 days into that, all of a sudden it wasn't about that at all. Okay? Now, here's what I think you just said, and I'm wide awake. You basically said they're coming out in almost better shape than they were, the Iranians, before we started this. Hello. Do we still not understand that we're dealing with religious fundamentalist crazies? They do not think the way Westerners think, and we can't think that they do. Basically, we've just said, okay, we spent a ton of money. Some people died, innocent people died. Over the weekend, an entire family, a father, a mother, a son, and a daughter-in-law, young people in their 30s, were killed in Israel when a missile hit. What have we done? Putting them back a generation, or frankly, with enough help from either the Soviets or the Chinese or who knows, the Arab real rich countries, they're back in business in a few years. It's not a generation. And if you have a threat, what is a generation? You know what this reminds me of? The budget crisis we have in this country. Every year it's the same thing. We have to shut something down. And then, we got 60 days. You're either doing something or you're not. And I'm very surprised because Trump is usually a person who follows through. I have to say I don't think he should have started this, particularly months before the midterms, because I think he's ruined it. I'm going to tell you that last night I am involved in this group, and last night, it's not political, last night there were about 35, 40 people at a meeting. I know, because I've been in this group for close to 20 years, that there were only 2 people, maybe a third one I don't know about, who don't despise Trump. What do you think these people are saying this morning? I mean, this is the biggest cluster F that I can think of in a very long time. And I don't know what to do with it. So help me to feel better, although I don't think you can, because every day I've been listening to you, and every day you're trying to put a positive spin on it, and every day you're coming up short, and it's not you. It's that you're trying to make a bad situation look better. I'd really love to know what you believe in your heart of hearts.
Well, look, Andrea, I mean, I said it at the beginning, and I said it a few times periodically over the war, the last 40 days. If I was advising the president, I would have said, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't start. Don't do it. Don't even go down this road, because it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. And the war hawks around you, and I'll tell you the person I blame. I blame Lindsey Graham. I can show you a news piece after news piece. And by the way, none of this has been denied by Lindsey Graham. nor has it been denied by Trump, nor has it been denied. He's in the Situation Room. You've got Pete Hegseth saying, get this guy out of here. You've got Marco Rubio saying, what the hell is this guy doing here? So you've got, Trump's team saying, why is this guy being elevated to the point like he's almost like Trump's consigliere when it comes to this war? And it was Lindsey Graham, if you want to know the truth, who went to him and he said, it's going to be over in 10 days. This is going to be a lightning war. It's going to be just like Venezuela. The Ayatollahs are this close to falling. All we got to do is hit them, kick that front door down, and the whole rotten structure will come crashing down. And it's all going to come out. Mark my words. Tulsi Gabbard at DNI said, the intelligence doesn't bear that out. Yes, there's a lot of people who hate the mullahs, but they got a lot of supporters as well. This is going to be a dogfight. Ratcliffe, CIA director, directly told him, we don't see the evidence for this immediate regime change. No, they've got deep roots, stronger than people think. But no, Lindsey Graham said, no, we can do this. Give 4 weeks and I guarantee you victory. Now, by the way, Lindsey's upset now. He's pissed off. Lindsey is not happy with Trump's decision now for a ceasefire and for calling off the next 2-3 weeks of bombing. He wanted him to go full Thunderdome. He wanted him to obliterate Iran today. So what I'm saying is they convinced him that they could have a quick victory because the question was brought up. I'm telling you, the media is lying. When they say, he didn't consider the Strait of Hormuz. Of course he did. General Dan Kane told him, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, J.D. Vance told him, everybody, Marco Rubio told him, they go, hey, they're going to block the strait. And if they block the strait, oil is going to go ba-boom. It's going to soar. And it's going to rattle global oil markets. It's going to maybe even trigger a global recession. And we got to be ready to come in there and maybe even take a heavy loss of life to unblock the strait. Lindsey Graham's answer was, it won't come to that. Because we're going to hit them so hard that they won't have time to block the Strait of Hormuz because they're going to fall in 10 days. And they said, don't worry, we'll take out the Ayatollah on day one, which they did. And it's all the top political leadership. Boom. So they'll have no command and control. They'll be basically headless, and then the whole thing will just collapse. So they made a fatal mistake in war. I'm not talking about the president now. I'm talking about the war hawks. They underestimated their enemy. They didn't give their enemy the respect that the enemy deserves. Not that I respect the Ayatollahs. I hate them. But when you go, look how long we planned D-Day. I'm just going to do that as an example. They said, hey, yeah, of course we hate Hitler. The guy's evil incarnate. But don't underestimate his fighters. Don't underestimate his forces. Don't underestimate the resilience of this regime. Like, you got to plan and prepare. You can't just come in there and let's start bombing and the whole thing. Yeah, it'll all come crashing down. Iran is not Venezuela. Now, who's left holding the bag? It's not Lindsey Graham. It's Donald Trump. So, I'm sorry. I have to call it the way I see it. So when I saw early on, look, Mark Levin is an idiot. I'm sorry. I have to say it. He's an idiot. Look at his track record. He told us Afghanistan would be a cakewalk, 20 years. Iraq, cakewalk. What was that? 15 years. When has this guy ever been right on foreign policy? This lunatic wants us to bomb Russia. This lunatic wants us to bomb China. But the Mark Levins and the Lindsey Grahams, by the way, and if you said, when you mentioned, I just was raising questions, is there an exit strategy? What happens when they block the Strait of Hormuz? Do we have a counter for that? You know what his answer was? I'm a woke Reich Nazi. Me, half my family murdered in the Holocaust. My grandfather, a year and a half in a Nazi concentration camp. where they did untold, where they tortured him in, the most vile, disgusting ways. And because I'm looking out for the vital interests of my country and my president, suddenly now, because I'm not in the war fever, I'm not just, yeah, let's bomb, yeah. Suddenly now, I'm a freaking Nazi? So that was the mindset and the mentality of the people that were surrounding Trump. Now, Mark Levin is still going to walk away a millionaire. Nothing's going to happen to him. Lindsey Graham's probably going to get reelected. Nothing's going to happen to him. But now you know who's left holding the bag? Trump. And he's going to have this burden now going into the midterms. And just so that everybody knows, yes, gas is going to come down. Thank the Lord. But it's not going to come down like it was before the war because of the damage done to Saudi Arabia and Qatar and UAE and all of their oil infrastructure. It's going to take months and months for them to be able to get back to what they were before the war, which means there's going to be a chronic shortage for at least 3-4 months. Gas is still going to be high going into the midterms. That's going to be an albatross around Trump. Now, I'm the only one. I'm like, I would be looking at this. Traitor. Yeah, you're not an American. You were born in Canada. I'm telling you, that's all I kept getting. You know, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't believe in Trump. You don't trust in Trump. Just on and on. I should be kicked out of MAGA. I was a traitor to the country, according to Scott Jennings. I was a Nazi, a secret Hitler lover. See, when they give you counter arguments like this, you're like, no, I know I'm right. Because you're not refuting my arguments. It's just cheap shot after cheap shot, ad hominem after ad hominem. Now, look, I'm going to be brutally honest with you from the heart. If you supported this war, this is what Donald Trump has given you. He has taken the nuclear threat off the table for years to come. And if you believe him, that they really were 10 days away from 11 bombs and that they were going to put it on a ballistic missile and, hit Tel Aviv or hit Paris or hit London and basically start World War III, well, then he saved the world. That's why I'm looking at Lindsey Graham and I'm like, what are you so upset about? General Jack Keane, who was another key architect, that clown on Fox. The disappointment, you could see it all over his face. No, you can't stop now. Why would you stop now? We still got 2-3 more weeks of bombing to go. Well, hold on. If he saved the world, he saved the world. He's Churchill. So at least celebrate that, which makes me think, I'm telling you, it's going to come out. Iran did not pose an imminent threat. I underlined the word imminent. Yes, they're a threat. They've always been a threat. But imminent means like now. Like if we don't do it now, that's it. There's going to be a mushroom cloud over the Middle East. I'm telling you, there was never any evidence for that. And so Trump was almost stampeded or dragged or manipulated into fighting this war. But fine, I could be wrong. We'll see. If I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. Believe me, I have no ego about these things. But if that's your belief, then you should be happy because he saved humanity. He saved, the world. But, but so he's gotten that. And look, it's no small thing. No Navy, you can't affect anybody. You can't project power. You can't threaten anybody. No Air Force, ditto. No air defenses. They're going to be at the mercy of Israel now for years to come. Israel can bomb away whenever they want and have little to no resistance. So they have been significantly weakened. Their economy has been badly damaged. The mullahs are not the same as they were before the war. However, they're coming out of it with control over the Strait of Hormuz, which they didn't have before. They're going to get a transit fee, a tolling system, which is going to be a ton of cash, and they're going to have no sanctions, which means they can sell a lot of oil. So, to be honest, I think Trump doesn't quite recognize, yeah, in theory, you're right. They've been set back 10, 15, 20 years. But we're talking trillions of dollars in revenue pouring in from both oil and the tolls, with China and Russia ready to reload and resupply them. I think you're looking at maybe 5-6 years. He bought us 5-6 years. Now, you have to ask yourself, was it worth it? That's the question. 13 Americans are dead. 252 are wounded, some of them permanently crippled. And we have spent over $100 billion fighting this war. I'm just giving you the facts. Never mind on the Iranian side, the damage that was done there. Was it worth it? And politically, was it worth it? It fractured his coalition. You had many people, diehard supporters of Trump, who, I'm not saying they've turned on him. I think they're going to vote for him in November, but really came out against him on this war. And then you had idiots like Mark Levin who call everybody who disagrees a traitor, which just makes everybody hate each other even more. So you have now divided your own base. Your base is fractured. Oil is up. The price you pay at the pump is up. Inflation is back up. Energy is back up. In an election year where the Democrats are going for your throat. And they're going to run basically saying he promised cheap gas, look what we got. He promised no new wars, look what we got. I'm just telling you, that's going to be their line of attack. Now, I think, personally, the Democrats being the Democrats are going to overplay their hand. And when you find out how utterly crazy and insane and radical and dangerous they are, Trump can rally the country and still win the midterms. And I think that's one of the reasons why, to his credit, he's like, look, that's it. I'm done. This can't keep going on. I know the Lindsey Grahams and the Jack Keens and the Warhawks were like, another 2 weeks, another 3 weeks, another 4 weeks. He's like, we're going into May. And then what? I'm going to have we were at $4 a gallon yesterday. Had the war continued another 2 to 3 weeks, it would be $5 a gallon, maybe even $6 a gallon. It's going to trigger a recession. Trump would be politically dead in the water. So, he has to he has to win the midterms or else he's going to be impeached. So he was under a tight clock in a very tight time frame. And honestly, to be fair to him, I think he got the best he could possibly get. Militarily, he kicked their teeth in. And the nuclear threat, they can't come back to us in 8 more months and say, Iran's a threat again. Not after, we bombed the living hell out of them. So he can claim a real victory here. The question is, was it worth it? That's the question. Anyway, that's just my honest answer from the heart. Larry in Arkansas. Thanks for holding, Larry, and welcome.
Jeff, good morning.
Larry.
Yes, worth it. So the same intelligence that you were saying that cited that they were not an imminent threat believed when Iran said that they don't have anything that could reach our interest, right? Missile-wise. When this broke out, what was the first thing they do? They fire a missile at, what's that, Garcia, Diego, whatever the hell it's called?
Yes, Garcia Diego Island.
Twice the distance of what for years they claimed they were capable of, right? And it's not a big leap to think that they could attach something nuclear to that. How did North Korea get into the position where they're practically untouchable? It wasn't through the nukes. It was through building up enough ballistic missiles pointing at South Korea, saying, if you come near us, we're going to destroy South Korea.
Larry, can you please hang on? I'm up against a break. Okay, we're going to go right back to Larry in Arkansas, but first, Wednesday, 7:20, you know what that means. Truth or troll? Take it away, Mike.
And now, America's favorite game show, where you get to decide on the Kuhner Report. This is Truth or Troll.
Today's entry for Truth or Troll comes from President Trump speaking at a press conference at the White House the other day when he talks about the Iranian people and how they are begging for the United States to keep bombing the hell out of them.
You've said Iranians would be mad if you stopped these attacks, but why would they want you to blow up their infrastructure, to cut off their power? Wouldn't that be punishing Iranians for the actions of the regime?
They would be willing and it's suffering. They would be willing to suffer that in order to have freedom. The Iranians have, and we've had numerous intercepts. Please keep bombing. Bombs that are dropping near their homes. Please keep bombing. Do it. And these are people that are living where the bombs are exploding. And when we leave and we're not hitting those areas, they're saying, please come back, come back, come back. These are the people. I don't know what they do. All I can tell you is they want freedom. They have lived in a world that you know nothing about. It's a violent, horrible world where if you protest, you are shot.
So there it is. So Trump is saying that the Iranian people are begging for the United States to continue bombing them. What do you think? Is he telling the truth there, or is he just trolling?
Honestly, how do I say this? He's half trolling, half telling the truth. I mean, he's, obviously he doesn't like the reporter and he's kind of sticking it to her. But no, there have been reports, credible reports of opposition people to the regime who are saying, please don't stop the bombing. In fact, the Wall Street Journal had a very good piece last night about the reaction to the ceasefire in Iran. And of course, there were many who were celebrating. They were happy. Either supporters of the regime or they just don't want, they want the bombing to stop. But you had many people who opposed the regime who said, I'm disappointed. I wish he would, escalate and obliterate the infrastructure of our country. In other words, to bring the mullahs to their knees and have them overthrown. So there were some, there's no question, Trump's not making this up. There were many Iranians who were saying, please just keep the bombing. It's our only way to see the mullahs finally be sent into the dustbin of history. So I would say, part trolling, part truth. But honestly, Mike, I would say on this one, mostly truth. But that's me. I want to hear from you. President Trump says Iranians were asking or almost begging him to continue bombing their country in the hopes of toppling the regime. Do you think he was A, trolling, or B, telling the truth? You know where I stand. No, I think he was telling mostly the truth. I'm not saying the whole country was asking for him to continue bombing, but they clearly were people who opposed the regime. Their only way out was to bomb. Were American bombs and missiles. So, but again, I want to hear from you. Truth or troll, you can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner. You can also vote via X, my handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, Kuhner. Okay, let's go right back to Larry in Arkansas. Larry, you're saying this was a victory? They had ballistic missiles that could fire 4,000 kilometers. You put a nuke or a dirty bomb on one of those, and the mullahs then pose an existential threat. Their ballistic missile program had to be degraded and smashed. Please pick up where you left off, Larry.
Okay, Jeff, where I was left off was North Korea got to a point where they had enough conventional weapons that they couldn't be touched to make their nuclear program. Now they have a nuclear bomb threat. And there was for years they were saying that North Korea would never get the bomb. They got one. So now, fast forward to the 21st century, war, conventional war, is long gone. We're seeing something scary now. They can use unmanned drones, clusters, to kill people, blow stuff up. And Iran had those, and they were building up. They would get to a point, but with the ballistics and these drone capabilities, that they could continue to enrich their nuclear aspirations and get nuclear weapons in the background, and not a thing could be done about it because of the ballistics they had. That was the imminent threat. They're going to get to a point of no return where if they built up enough, nobody could stop them from reaching their goals for nuclear weapons. Whether you agree, disagree, that's my opinion on that. Now, go ahead. You're going to ask me something.
Well, no, Larry, the only thing is, and I hear you, it's a very coherent, logical argument, a very reasonable argument, no question. The problem now, and this is the $64,000 question, it's the enriched uranium, that the 900 pounds, 60% enriched uranium, that is still under the ground in Iran. Now, the mullahs are saying they're keeping it. Trump is saying we want it. If the mullahs keep the 60%, that's why the devil is in the details. Okay, huge, very dramatic news last night. Just under 90 minutes before Trump's self-imposed deadline, he announced a huge breakthrough. He has announced a 2-week ceasefire. Both sides, Iran and the United States, have agreed to a ceasefire. Israel as well. Not with Lebanon. They're going to continue their fight with Hezbollah in Lebanon. But Israel will not be striking Iran for the next 2 weeks. Iran will not be striking anyone, and we will not be striking Iran. So it is a 2-week ceasefire. There will be peace negotiations that will start in Pakistan this Friday, mediated by the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And at the heart of this is the agreement by the mullahs to open the Strait of Hormuz for the next 2 weeks. Subject to, and this is very key, that they retain control over the ships going through. They have to ask the Iranian armed forces permission to be allowed to go through. They will be given permission, but they must ask and get the permission and coordinate with the military, or what's left of the military, in Iran. Now, there is a 10-point plan. In about half an hour, I'm going to give you the full 10 points that the Iranians have put on the table, that Trump now said is the framework, his words, the basis for what he says will be a final peace agreement. Obviously, not every part of that 10-point plan is going to be accepted by our side, and they shouldn't accept parts of it, frankly. But he says that will be the basis now of a new peace deal, which will be a permanent peace deal between the United States, Iran, and the rest of the region. And at the heart of it is Iran's regime. The Ayatollahs will remain in power. They will have recognized as the legitimate government of Iran. Furthermore, they will be able to keep the right to a nuclear program, not nuclear weapons, but a civilian nuclear program with the right of uranium enrichment. All sanctions will be lifted on Iran, and Iran will have control or sway or influence over the Strait of Hormuz, up to and including a tolling system, which they have never had before, to impose transit fees. They do that in the Suez Canal as well. Not the Iranians, but those who run the Suez, there's a transit fee system. They want that now for the Strait of Hormuz. Trump has said you can get it. Now you have to give up any attempt, any ambition to ever have a nuclear weapon. Your ballistic missile program must never develop to the point that you can threaten Europe or the United States. And you must reject supporting any terrorist group or any terrorist proxy. And so if the Iranians agree to that, which they say they have or they will, then Trump says this is the basis now for an enduring peace. Now, the big sticking point, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but this is so important, is the enriched uranium, 60% that the Iranians had, about 900 pounds worth, that is still beneath the rubble, buried way underneath the rubble in these key mountain sites that the Iranians had that were bombed 8-9 months ago in Operation Midnight Hammer. It is that uranium that our side said was giving the Iranians the ability to go from 60 to 90% and thereby be able to develop a bomb. In fact, Witkoff said it was 11 bombs. That was the cause of the war. If we don't get that enriched uranium back, literally, I mean, you can't make, I'm not exaggerating for effect, then Iran will end the war as close to a nuclear bomb as they were before the war even started. Trump is insisting either the Iranians give it back to us, or fine, we will send in a team of nuclear scientists and we will extract it, dig it up, extract it from the ground and seize it and take it out of the country. The Iranians are insisting, their negotiators are insisting that the uranium stays in Iran. To me, as I said, the devil is in the details. This is the key point. This is clearly the key point. If the uranium stays in Iran, then honestly, I don't see how you can justify the war. I get Larry's point about ballistic missiles, and it's a very good point, but I'm sorry, then what was it all, ultimately, what was it all for? If you get the uranium out and into our hands, then I think Trump can say, look, this was a win. So anyway, agree, disagree, this is the way I look at it. So I want to ask all of you, number one, what do you make of the ceasefire? Are you happy that Trump pulled back from the brink and did not launch a war of obliteration on Iran's civilian infrastructure? If you are pro-war and supported Operation Epic Fury from the beginning, did Trump blink in your view? Did he stop short of what he needed to do? Should he have gone ahead and bombed Iran, as he said, back to the Stone Age? And the ultimate question now, if you supported the war, are you happy with this outcome? Or are you not happy with this outcome? Is this a deal you can live with? 617-266-6868 is the number. Bob in Raynham. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, I'd like to make 2 points, if I might.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
The first one being, you touched on it a little bit yesterday. Of course, Iran has a closed society, as far as access to the internet and whatever, and their propaganda machine all comes from within, and the mullahs and whatever. And of course, for years they've been calling us the Great Satan. And, this is how dangerous liberalism is. So what do you think those mullahs and their media are feeding their people regarding what we as Americans are? I'm sure they're showing, our kids being mutilated and all this other nonsense. So why, we think that's satanic and evil. So what do you think they think, and why do you think they would ever want our culture to infiltrate their culture? So that's my first point. My second point is, unfortunately, I think Iran won this war because Trump blew it as far as even going in there. I mean, we supposedly ended the nuclear threat in January when we bombed. And now with this incursion and, causing the gas prices to go up and everything, Iran has assured the midterms for the Democrats. And that'll be the end of MAGA and the end of the United States, I'm afraid.
Well, Bob, I hope not. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that the Democrats do not win in November. And if you've noticed, that's why if you were pro-war, anti-war, you have a home in Kuhner country. Because to me, if you're MAGA, you're my family. If you're America First, you're my family. If you're pro-America, you're my family. And a family has disagreements, which is fine. That's normal. But in the end, we're on the same side. And, we want the same things. And communism is our enemy. And make no mistake about it. The communists are coming for us in November. And the Democrats, to show you how sick they are gleeful that they can now try to hurt Trump over this war. They wanted the mullahs to win. They're trying to spin it now like this is an incredible defeat for the United States, which I hear what you're saying, Bob, that ultimately Iran can claim a victory. But I don't know how you can destroy a country's Navy and Air Force and shatter their military and decapitate their regime and turn around and say that the United States was defeated. I mean, these people are sick. Now, look, I'm with you. I think Trump, or at least Pete Hegseth, who, by the way, I think is going to be in trouble. Okay, just to put an exclamation point on my call with Bob, look, I think there's no denying the fact that, look, again, we didn't lose a single battle. Iran's military has been shredded. Its ballistic missile stockpile has been severely degraded. Its economy has been badly weakened and damaged. Look, the mullahs are in a militarily, economically, they're in a much, much weaker position than they were before the war. There's no question. And, the nuclear threat, whether it was imminent, not imminent, that nuclear threat has been wiped out at least for, years to come. So, in a way, you look at a ledger and you're like, well, how the hell did Iran, how could you say Iran won? But, Bob made a very good point. They come out of the war, intact. The regime survives, which for them is a big thing. And they're in control of the Strait of Hormuz. And they weren't in control of the Strait before. And sanctions, I just broke this morning. Trump announced another on Truth Social that they're already negotiating tariffs and sanctions relief, and they're already at that stage of the deal. So the sanctions are going to be lifted. Look, really, you have to be honest. When the mullahs say we won, and Iranian state media, that's all they're saying now is we won, and you see these crowds of Iranian, the regime supporters, the women with that covered the head to toe. I mean, you see their face, but that's about it. With their tongues out, la 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 la, and then, waving the Iranian flag. That's not for show. A, they're happy the war is over, obviously, but B, think about it from their point of view. The great Satan and the little Satan threw everything they had at us, and we're still standing. And now we have sway over the strait, and sanctions are lifted, and we get to keep a nuclear program, not the weapons, but a nuclear program. And in a sense, we're going to be normalized back into the international community. I got to say, I mean, it's from their point of view, yeah. I mean, they have, and that's the key to a ceasefire. In fact, a senior administration official admitted that yesterday. He said the key to a good ceasefire is both sides can claim a victory. So, and there, Trump's administration is openly saying, yeah, they can claim some parts of this as a victory. So I think, honestly, we'd be foolish not to see that. Now, here, I want to read this. It's a very good text. You can text the Kuhner man, 70470, 70470. This is from 613. Jeff, I disagree with you and some of your callers. Trump faced a nuclear threat from Iran. This threat wasn't just towards Israel and the region, but potentially towards Europe, the world, and down the road, the United States. He eliminated that threat. Not forever, but for at least a generation. In other words, he defanged the mullahs. And he made sure that our children don't have to deal with a nuclear-armed Iran. Statesmanship isn't easy. It isn't pretty. It comes with a huge cost and a huge price. But President Trump showed again that he is the great statesman of our age. So, in other words, and this is where Trump, I think, is going to legitimately say, look, there's going to be no more nuclear weapons. I ended the nuclear threat once and for all. And Iran's military has been utterly eviscerated. And if they stop funding terrorists, as they are going to agree to do, then really it's going to be a new Middle East and a very different regime that the world is now going to confront. And so he's going to claim, look, I didn't solve it permanently, but I certainly, for a generation, I have pushed their nuclear and ballistic program off into the future. And I've given now the people of Iran the breathing space, the time to overthrow the mullahs if they so want. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, one more. This is from 781. Jeff, I hate to say this, but Trump's victory is at best a Pyrrhic victory, an empty victory. Presuming that the quote-unquote imminent threat of Iran having nuclear weaponry was on the near horizon, what has practically changed now? If the points of these negotiations are adopted, the 10 points, Iran will now have codified the right to charge bakshish, which is, I think, the Farsi term for a fee, a transit fee, for passage through the Strait of Hormuz. And as you noted, that's $500 billion a year. With sanctions lifted on Iran's profits from the sale of its own oil, this will add untold hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars more. So flushed with this level of cash, who needs a nuclear weapons program? Iran will be able to buy any sort of nuclear weapon from North Korea or Pakistan or China or Russia on the black market. And to give scale to the staggering amount of cash Iran is now poised to rake in, consider that the cost to the U.S. taxpayer of this war was about $100 billion. And we gave Ukraine about $250 billion. And that's not even 1 year of Iran's expected tolls in the Strait of Hormuz. If this is victory, what the heck would defeat look like? So this obviously believes that Iran did win the war and that we got the short end of it. Agree, disagree. Again, the audience deeply split on this issue. Jim in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Jim, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff. The bottom line on this, I do believe, is a win for the U.S. and the world. We're going to have lower gas prices, less inflation, less U.S. deaths, less civilians in Israel having to face bombing every day. Unfortunately, it is a loss for Trump, the deal itself. They're getting more. I mean, anyone could be honest about that. However, okay, there's a couple of things here. This isn't a permanent loss for Trump. I think going forward, if we did do what he said he was going to do, if we were blowing up the civilization, if we were doing, civilian infrastructure, that would have been worst possible case scenario unimaginable. I mean, forget about the liberation idea. That's gone. We lose the moral ground. There's a giant Christian population in Iran, it's like one of the highest growing in the world, which I didn't realize, like 5 million almost. So we would, kill them. We're threatening opening Pandora's box of nuclear. So that should not even be an option. So anyways, I think it was the best of a bad situation. Now, why isn't this permanently bad for Trump? And I can tell you why. I actually think a great leader, and I wish we had these in Vietnam and Iraq, I think you need to know when to, know when to fold them. Know when it's the time to get out, okay? I think if we knew this a month into Vietnam or Iraq, we'd be in a much better situation in countless other wars that we've gotten into that we'd end up getting the best of. I think if he can definitely spin this to the point where he can look good in the midterms, believe it or not. You get rid of people like Hegseth, you get rid of the Lindsey Grahams, you stop listening to the Mark Levins. You do focus on the fact we degraded the military and the Navy and even the nuclear program. Those are good things. And we focus on that, and we build up America. We get back to what made our country good, the amazing citizens in this country, the brightest people in the world. Let's focus on that. Let him get back to that agenda. And you're going to see a much better November than if we actually did go in there and bomb and destroy everything and got ourselves into Vietnam on steroids. It wasn't the time we were the most divided country we've ever been. We're dealing with Biden inflation still, terrible COVID policies still. We went into this as a very unpopular war, which we've never done. We've always gone towards popular. So it wasn't the time. And interceptors were running low on both sides. So this was a good move. I hope it continues. My worry is it might be a temporary thing to build up our interceptors and to kind of make another plan. I hope not. I hope we do get out. Yes, it wasn't. I don't think it was worth it, but I think it's the best thing we could have done at this time. And I do think there's a chance that we can build a Republican Party, and MAGA especially, back to a real moment by November where we can have some wins that don't make us forget this, but really minimize what the ceasefire agreement was. Because again, and we could still rework some of that framework, but I think that's the reality of it. We have to face it, and we have to move forward.
Jim, I agree. I completely agree. Look, and that's why when the news broke last night, I was pumping my fists because I said, look, cut your losses. And I don't even know if it is a loss, to be honest. I think this is more of a draw than it is if I was to, scorecard it. I think it's more of a draw. But the key is now he can pivot, he can come home, and he can focus on domestic issues. And he still has time. Gas prices, I agree with you, will come down. Energy costs will come down. Inflation will come down. And by the grace of God, they come down before the midterms. And if he can get the SAVE Act passed, if he can finish building the wall, if he can focus on lowering the cost of, living and making life more affordable, if he can really, like a laser, focus on domestic issues in the domestic economy, I think he can pull a rabbit out of the hat and win the midterms. At the bare minimum, he can blunt a blue wave. And if he does that, then we still have 2 more years to really finish what Trump started. So I agree with you. Had he gone on for 2, 3, 4 more weeks and shattered completely, obliterated their infrastructure, there would have been a lot of Iranian civilian deaths. I think it would have radicalized the anti-war movement in this country and around the world. I think you would have seen a refugee humanitarian crisis that would have affected the whole region and Europe. And we'd be almost enmeshed in the Strait and in Iran and in the Persian Gulf. He almost wouldn't be able to extricate himself. Now he can pivot. And he can come back and really plausibly, I know many of the war hawks are a little disappointed, but look, I mean, really, you should, if you were worried about the nuclear threat from Iran, you can sleep easy now. Because I'm telling you, that nuclear program is finished. It's finished. Now, I do think at the negotiating table, He's giving them a lot. Those are some big, juicy carrots, that he's going to give them, potentially. You got to get that enriched uranium from the ground. I mean, that would almost be, for me, that and obviously having the Strait of Hormuz cleared. But, that enriched uranium, you've got to get that. And if he gets it, he can plausibly go to the American people and say, look, again, that previous texter I thought said it very well. Didn't get everything I wanted, but we got enough. And, the nuclear threat, at least for now, has been dealt with. And, in the end, it's up to another administration if this threat rears its ugly head again. But, I'm with you, Jim. When you're making a mistake, stop. And too many times we've been waging wars and they just double and triple and quadruple down and they make a bad situation catastrophic. So Trump can still walk away from this and turn things around, rally the troops, rebuild and re-energize the Republican Party, and take it to the Democrats in November. To me now, it's all about November. Jim, thank you so much for that call. I really appreciate it. And I'll be honest, the SAVE Act, he's got to throw Congress is going to be coming back, and he's got to throw everything he has behind the SAVE Act. So you get the war behind you, he can focus all of his guns, all of his attention. And, hopefully we get that SAVE Act passed, then we're looking good for November. Dave in Saugus. Thanks for holding, Dave, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you, Dave?
Well, Jeff, the sun's out, the sky's blue, so you can't ask for anything better than that.
Dave, what do you make? Were you shocked at Trump's announcement yesterday that they had a ceasefire for 2 weeks? And how did you feel about it? Are you happy, or did you want him to go, Thunderdome and make it Obliteration Day?
Well, Jeff, it would have been some nice fireworks in the sky, let's put it like that. But anyhow, like you're saying, Jeff, there are a lot of innocent people who wants nothing to do with this crazy regime that's going on, okay? And, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Hillary Clinton give Iran the uranium and everything back when she was around? Isn't it her fault that they even have the uranium from the beginning, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh, yeah, no question. No question. And Dave, I want to ask you this. Do you trust, to me, I think this is another big thing about, we're acting like it's signed, sealed, and delivered. They still have to negotiate it, obviously, but can you really trust the mullahs? I don't. I mean, they're liars, and they've been proven to be liars. And in Islam, it's allowed, literally, the Quran allows you to lie to the infidel if you're there to advance the cause of, the Islamic Caliphate. So part of me is thinking they'll put anything on paper, but is it worth the paper it's written on? So unless we can get a verification system where we know, okay, they really are not trying to rebuild a nuclear weapon. No, they're not going to, develop ballistic missiles that can target Europe or target, further away. In other words, unless we have these guarantees and a way to verify these guarantees, do you trust them? I don't trust them, Dave. What say you?
If I don't trust anybody over there, Jeff, and at the same time, how many sleeper cells? Think of it like this. If Trump blew up what he wanted to literally blow up, which he's going to one way or the other, but it comes down to this. And if he launched every missile we have out of every bomb and wipe out the entire terrorist cells that are over there, get them out of the way. Jeff, the other problem we do have, how many sleepers are in this country right now that are terrorists that Biden let in through the borders? We have so many sleeper cells here, Jeff. It's not even funny.
That's a great point. That's a very, very good point. That's another reason why I'm breathing a sigh of relief. with a ceasefire and maybe a peace deal. Again, the devil's in the details. We have to see what's, fully in the detail. But at least for now, that takes that threat off the table. So, look, Dave, I think Trump ultimately made the right decision, and we shall see what happens. But to me, there's no question about it now. The mullahs are going to have to fulfill their promises. And we better be very smart to verify, because I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. Dave, thank you so much for that call. Andy in Milford. Thanks for holding, Andy, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Andy.
Jeff, what I've been thinking all morning since this debate started is President Trump needed an off-ramp for this whole affair. And it looks to me like he very well just might have gotten it. And that's going to be a good thing, because now he, in fact, can pivot and get back to domestic affairs in this country from now through the midterms. Now, Jeff, there is a far more important issue that I have been seeing since this whole affair with Iran started. Remember, Jeff, the presidential election of 2024. That election was decided with a mandate. And that mandate said no more wars. That mandate particularly said no more wars in the Middle East, no more forever wars, no more nation building. I mean, that was a compact and understanding that was a disaster in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're not going to have any more of that. Now, these neocon war pigs, Jeff, and we all know who they are, Senator Lindsey Graham, Mark Levin, John Bolton, many others, they have displayed nothing but absolute contempt for the will of the American people as that will was expressed in the last presidential election. And the MAGA movement needs to be focused like a laser beam on the nomination processes, primaries, and runoffs all over this country. Now, in the case of Senator Lindsey Graham, the primary down in South Carolina will be June 9th. And I believe if nobody gets above 50%, it goes to a runoff, and that'll be June 23rd. Currently, it does not look like Lindsey Graham will get that 50 plus 1% he needs to get a runoff, to avoid a runoff. And what remains to be seen, and just from what I can see how it's looking at right now, the only thing that needs to be decided is it'll either be Paul Dans or Mark Lynch that would advance to that runoff to be able to oppose Senator Lindsey Graham directly.
Andy, I'm with you. Lindsey Graham has to be primaried. And look, whoever, I don't care if it's, which of the two challengers emerges in the runoff. I'm going to urge everybody to support that challenger. Okay, President Trump now announces a 2-week ceasefire. He says that they are very close now to a final deal with the mullahs. This will be hammered out most likely at the negotiating table between a U.S. side and an Iranian side in Pakistan beginning on Friday. Now, it's very clear what the outlines of the deal are. The mullahs will get to stay in power. They will have a right to a nuclear program, not nuclear weapons. That's very important. But they will have control over the Strait of Hormuz, or at least have influence enough to impose, say, transit fees or a toll. And they will have sanctions lifted. In exchange for that, they will guarantee or promise to never have a nuclear weapon, to either have nuclear ambitions for a weapon or to ever build or buy or purchase a nuclear weapon. They also are going to agree to some curbs on their ballistic missile program, especially those with a longer reach, and they will no longer be funding terrorist groups like Hamas or Hezbollah. Trump now has come out in a new Truth Social, just maybe 25, 30 minutes ago, in which he now says that Iran and the United States together will go inside Iran and extract all of the enriched uranium, those 900 pounds of highly enriched 60% uranium that we feared could easily be upgraded to 90%, which would mean weapons grade, and then used potentially as a bomb. So from what Trump is saying, if for there to be a deal, Iran must agree for us to go into Iran, extract, seize, and then take out all of that enriched uranium. And if that happens, then President Trump, I think, is very happy to sign a peace deal. So my question to you, A, do you like the contours or the framework of this deal? Trump says we've achieved all of our military objectives. Do you agree? And are you happy with the way now things are turning out? Was it a mistake to start this war? Or did Trump ultimately win this war? 617-266-6868. Mike, who do you want me to go to next, my friend? Mike in Florida. Thanks for holding, Mike, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you, sir?
Very good. How are you, Mike?
Good. I got to tell you, I was a little disappointed when I woke up this morning and start going through the news wires. I'm afraid that my president, who I voted for and I adore and have always backed, more or less, is starting to look like an empty suit here and, handing out, moving the line in the sand, to be cynical anytime the Iranians ask for it. I mean, there was a line in the sand weeks ago that this is it, Buster. This is the end of the line. This time, oh boy, we're going to take, knock you into the Stone Age. And it seems somebody can pick up the phone and be like, hey, look, we need a little breathing room here. And I appreciate the framework of the deal that they're working on for sure. But I'm kind of done holding my breath here, waking up in the morning and racing to the newswire to see, hey, did anything happen in the direction that he said it was going to happen? And, for the sake of saving lives and all this of the Iranian people, that's great. But again, I fear that he's becoming an empty suit, but tell me different.
Well, Mike, let me ask you, do you think he's lost? Because that's what some of the hawks, the war hawks, who supported him, the pro-war forces, are saying. Lindsey Graham is not happy. To show you how unhappy he is, Mike, he now has come out and said any deal between the United States and Iran in Pakistan is going to have to be reviewed and then confirmed in the Senate. In other words, like what they did with Obama's nuclear deal. And Lindsey Graham is saying, he said, look, I'm going to go through with a fine-tooth comb. I'm going to review it. Senators are going to review it. And if there's anything there we don't like, we're going to scuttle it. We're going to shoot it down. So, he openly came out and said, no, I wanted him to continue bombing for 2-3 more weeks. You promised to obliterate their civilian infrastructure. That's what we urged you to do. And you didn't do it. So Lindsey Graham is not happy. General Jack Keane, who is a key advisor for him on this war, he's not happy. I can tell you, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's definitely not happy. So, Mike, I want to ask you, do you think he stopped short of going, finishing the job and smashing their infrastructure and bringing the mullahs to their knees? Or do you think he stopped at just the right moment?
Well, I think he stopped too soon based on his own rhetoric and words. I'm a war hawk, too. I was raised in a military family and believe in our military, God bless them. but I'm just it's getting a little long in the tooth where we're going to finish the job, and oh boy, this is it. Here comes the big one. And, it just seems, as a citizen here, that for the asking, well, we're going to kick it down the road here a little bit. I would hate to think that in 2 weeks we're back to where we are this morning.
Mike, thank you for your service, and thank you for your call. 617-266-6868 is the number. Look, I think there's no question. President Trump knew politically, he, at least according to him, he could not sustain this war politically for another 2, 3, 4 weeks. And so he felt we got most of what he wanted to achieve. Now remember, he did say unconditional surrender. When the war began, he said there will be unconditional surrender. And he said to the Iranian people, rise up and take back your country. Well, the mullahs are still in power. Okay, my friends, I mentioned at the beginning of the show in my opening monologue that I think Trump's threat to obliterate Iran's bridges and power plants and civilian infrastructure, bomb them back to the Stone Age, as he put it, I think it clearly had an effect on the rulers of Iran. I think there's no doubt about it. And they realized, I mean, Trump's not playing around. This could cost us everything, literally everything. And so ultimately it brought the mullahs to the negotiating table. Trump was able to declare or announce a ceasefire. And now we're very close to potentially ending this war. And Trump wanted to end the war. That was the purpose. He's going to declare victory officially very, very soon. Okay, once this deal is cemented in Pakistan, he will declare victory, and then he will come home and he will pivot on domestic issues, and he's going to fight the Democrats all the way to November. But I think the media here, unintentionally, inadvertently, played into Trump's hands. Because what you saw yesterday, and frankly, to be fair, it wasn't just the liberal left media. You had the likes of Tucker Carlson going on and on about how Trump secretly wants to nuke Iran, that this was all leading up to this massive nuclear weapons attack, that Trump is this conqueror, this unhinged, deranged, wannabe dictator who now just wants to start dropping nukes on city after city after city and incinerate nearly 100 million Iranians. And so the hysteria, not just from Tucker Carlson, but from CBS, NBC, ABC News, I thought CNN, MS Now, they were going to lose their minds yesterday. Yelling, screaming, shouting. I mean, you should have seen them. He's going to nuke him! There's going to be tens and tens of millions of people dead. My God. I mean, they're like, this is Hitler. This is Mao. This is going to be Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They were losing their collective minds. Just to give you a taste, here is a short montage of leading Democrats having an absolute breakdown over Trump's Iran ultimatum. Roll cut 6A, Mike.
We need to be demanding that Congress convene today, and we need to be invoking the 25th Amendment.
This is a very dangerous moment and a very dangerous president. We have someone who's completely unfit for office right now, sitting in the White House.
We should stop an out-of-control president who is causing such harm to the American people.
We have a completely unhinged president who is threatening massive war crimes.
And it just went on and on. I mean, I'm just giving you, 3, 4, 5 of them. I could give you hundreds. Listen now. I could give you hundreds. Here's Nicole Wallace on MS Now. Okay, listen to this. You want to talk about fear-mongering panic porn. Roll cut 7, a mic.
Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York with the fate of tens of millions of humans right now on a knife's edge, because if nothing changes in the next 4 hours and Donald Trump follows through on the things he said out loud, his public threat, we may all soon be witness to a military assault so generationally and intentionally brutal that war crimes aren't just possible, but they become U.S. policy. But again, that is only if you take Donald Trump at his word. That's risky.
I mean, it's just tens of millions of lives are on the brink. War crimes will now just be part of American policy. Now, as I said to Sandy before the show today, you don't think the mullahs watch CNN? You don't think they watch MS Now? You don't think they watch Fox News? You don't think they watch, CBS and NBC and BBC? And by the way, so do the Russians, so do the Chinese. They have it on. They have satellite TV. They have it. They're glued. They're watching all of this as well. And so what are they seeing on the screen? They're seeing Trump's opposition in the media lose their minds, have a breakdown that basically he's going to nuke the Ayatollahs. Or that whatever, he's going to kill tens and tens of millions of people. Now, inadvertently, I don't think these idiots think through what they do because they're just, by the way, I don't even believe most of them, they don't even believe most of what they're saying. They're just reading off a script. Okay, they're just giving the Bills in Sudbury and the Chris's in Gloucester what they want to hear. But the Iranians are watching this. The leaders are watching this. And they're looking at each other and they're like, oh, my God. They're freaking out in the United States. Oh, my God. Look at them. Look at them. They're practically crying on the air. Their eyes are popping out of their skull. They really believe he's going to bomb us so badly that 30, 40, 50, 60 million of us are going to die. Sign the deal. Just tell them, yeah, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. In other words, without intending it, inadvertently, I believe they actually helped Trump psych out the Ayatollahs and the regime and bring them to the table. They actually played into Trump's hands. So you can disagree with me, but this is the Kuhner Country poll question of the day, sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Did the Democrats and the mainstream media inadvertently help President Trump force Iran into capitulation and a ceasefire? A, yes. B, no. You know where I stand? Oh, I think this is a hell yes. Hell yes. But that's me. I want to hear from you. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, KUHN is in national ER. You can also vote via X, my handle there, all one word, at the Kuhner Report, at the Kuhner Report, KUHN as in national ER. Anne-Marie in Marblehead. Thanks for holding, Anne-Marie, and welcome.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Are you there?
Yes, go ahead, Anne-Marie. You're on the air.
There were two things that bothered me. One was the unenriched uranium, so apparently they've come to an agreement on that. But the most important thing is the fact that they think they own the Strait of Hormuz, that it's going to be theirs. They want control of it, and they want to get billions of dollars a year for allowing people to go through that. That's a red flag. I mean, I can't imagine Trump agreeing to that.
Well, Anne-Marie, I'm a prisoner of what the media is reporting. I'm not there, but apparently he's agreed to the Iranians want reconstruction money. Trump doesn't want to give them American taxpayer money. So the way he's going to give them money to rebuild their country is to have them charge $1 per barrel. So every barrel, they're going to charge $1. as a kind of a toll or a transit fee. And that's going to enable them to raise about $500 billion a year. So, and they did not have that before the war. They've never had it. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, just like as I was saying in that call, Trump obviously wanted to respond to Iran's demands that there be reconstruction money to help rebuild their country. And so they were demanding reparations from the United States. Trump said no. But he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. You can charge a transit fee, a toll. So essentially about $1 a barrel. And there's a lot of barrels of oil that go through the Strait of Hormuz every day, every week, every month. And so people say it's going to be about $500 billion a year. It's going to be a massive windfall of cash. And they're going to they're going to ease the sanctions. In fact, they're going to lift all the sanctions. So Iran will become a full member of the international community, and they can sell, and they have a lot of oil to sell. They can sell oil and natural gas on the international market at full price. So Iran will be, they won't be short of money. I'll tell you this. So in one sense, they are in a stronger position than when the war began. The sanctions will be lifted. Big victory for them. We have to call it I call it the way I see it, objectively. And they get control over the strait, or at least significant influence over the strait. So, the Iranians clearly have enough where they can claim at least a partial victory in this war. 617-266-6868. Agree, disagree. Pete Hegseth just finished his briefing at the Pentagon, and he now says, as far as he is concerned and the administration, this is a decisive military victory for the United States. That Iran was begging for a deal, according to Secretary Hegseth, and that Trump obliged, provided, subject to, that they reopen the strait immediately, which they have, and that they negotiate a permanent deal, not just a 2-week ceasefire, but a permanent peace deal on a good faith basis. And so, according to Hegseth, the United States has emerged as the decisive victor in this war. Do you agree with Pete Hegseth, or do you feel he's spinning and trying to deflect from the fact that they promised regime change? There is no regime change. They vowed unconditional surrender. There is no unconditional surrender. 617-266-6868. Sheldon in Scituate. Thanks for holding, Sheldon, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff.
Hi.
Everything that Trump does is about growing the American economy and ultimately the economy of the world. And he just opened the faucet in Iran, which will drive oil prices down across the world. And by September, October, we'll be paying way less for fuel than we were before this war. And don't forget, he's going to China next month. He delayed that trip, I think intentionally, to get this behind him. So now he can go over there and make a deal with them to either say, buy our oil or buy Venezuelan oil through us at a much lower price, and I'll reduce the tariffs on you and help the economy of the world. The bumper you played a couple segments ago was everybody wants to rule the world. I think Trump wants to rule the world, but not from a dictator standpoint, but from an economic standpoint that grows the economy of the world and makes it better than it's ever been. And I think he just took another step in doing that.
Are you happy with the way things have turned out, Sheldon?
I'm happy that our economy, I think, will get back on track. I voted for Trump, but I'm not a fan of the tariffs, and we've talked about that before. But I think that everything he does, he's trying to make the economy better. I wasn't happy with the Easter message. I thought it could have been done much cleaner and nicer. I get what he was trying to do, but I thought it was very crassly done. It wasn't Mr. Gorbachev tear down this wall. It was just ugly, nasty language that you and I wouldn't use with our children or in a business deal. So from that standpoint, a lot of his tactics I cringe at, but ultimately you understand what he's doing. He's just trying to win for the American people.
Sheldon, final question. It leaves the Ayatollahs, or at least their regime, the IRGC, in power. There is no regime change. And on top of that, they have some control over the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to be charging, as I said, a transit fee, and the sanctions will be lifted. Now, I know you're saying that's a good thing because then that oil will go to the world market. That's going to drive down the price of oil and gas even more. But it does give now the Ayatollahs potentially over, multiple years, trillions of dollars, not just to rebuild their country, but potentially to rebuild their military. Does that concern you that now the Ayatollahs will be swimming in petrodollars?
A concern, but I think that what Trump just showed them was, listen, if you get out of line, we're going to come in and we're going to bomb you again. So what's to stop future presidents from doing the exact same thing that we did here if they get too far out of line? I mean, nothing is forever, obviously, but I think that what he's doing right now is trying to grow the economy of the world. And honestly, he probably doesn't care what happens after he's out of office. He's just trying to get things going now.
Interesting. Sheldon, thank you very, very much for that call. So Sheldon, with some caveats, thinks, but overall, it's a win. And Trump achieved most of his objectives. So, and he supports Trump. So again, you have someone now who's likes what Trump has done and essentially supports his decision. 617-266-6868. Bill in Sudbury. Thanks for holding, Bill, and welcome.
Oh, good morning. Good morning, Jeff. Good morning.
Bill.
I didn't call to challenge you or needle you today. I called to just throw another log on the fire, like you say.
Well, but I mean, to be honest, Bill, you call and you don't listen to the show, and then you claim,
to the show every day.
No, hold on, and you claim, that I should be for something when I tell you why I'm against it. Then you keep telling me you're for it. So, to be honest, Bill, you do call to troll, and you call to troll. But that's okay. So go ahead. Say your piece, Bill.
I do, Jeff. I called to challenge you and needle you like I would a friend or a brother, okay? It's not out of hate. Okay, so I just want to add something else. While you're worried about the nuclear stuff, remember that a fully loaded modern LNG tanker is the most explosive thing ever made by man. It's equal to 30 Hiroshima bombs. It's much, much more powerful than your average nuclear weapon. And so just remember that that's there too. And anybody could hit that. They could hit it by accident. We could hit it by accident. So this is a really, really dangerous situation before you even talk about the nuclear.
Bill, are you trying to tell me that, and I get it, it's very, a tanker with, loaded with liquefied natural gas. Sure, you blow it up, it's going to be a massive explosion. But are you trying to tell me that it's the equivalent of 30 atomic bombs that we dropped on Hiroshima?
Approximately the same explosive power, but it would be much worse because it would be a cascading explosion, more like a thermonuclear kind of more like a thermobaric type weapon.
So it would be like radioactivity. It would basically roast and incinerate the Middle East.
It was on for days.
Where did you get this information, Bill?
I work in the oil industry, Jeff. I thought you knew that.
I thought you were on welfare.
You imagined that. Well, just like you imagined that I hate you. I call you to challenge you, Jeff, because I can't.
No, because you love me. I get it. No, when you call for me to be murdered, it's because you love me. It's when you call for the audience to be murdered, it's because you love us. It's when you call us Nazis and white supremacists. It comes, like a brother from the bottom of your heart. Come on, Bill. But, Bill, listen, I don't know what you're smoking, dude, to be honest with you. But there's no way in hell that if you blow up a tanker, it is the equivalent of 30 atomic bombs. I don't know where you read that. I don't know where you got that idea. But I got news for you. Tankers get blown up, and it's not 30 Nagasaki's or 30 Hiroshimas. But again, I appreciate the call, and have a nice day, Bill. 617-266-6868. He loves me like a brother. Jeez, I wouldn't want to be his brother. Let's just put it that way. You Nazi scum! Die! Die, you Nazi scum! 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me put it on the table for all of you. President Trump now, 90 minutes before his self-imposed deadline at 8 p.m. yesterday, called off Obliteration Day, or as he called it, Plant Day, Power Plant Day, and Bridge Day all in one. So he called off the massive bombardment of Iranian civilian infrastructure. As he put it in his Truth Social post yesterday morning, a civilization will die tonight and probably never to be brought back again. And we went from that to now the president saying we have a 2-week ceasefire, and very likely now it's going to be hammered out in Pakistan. But it looks like we're going to have a permanent deal between the United States, Iran, and the larger Middle East. Iran will keep its regime. The mullahs will survive. On top of that, they will have control over the Strait of Hormuz, or at least to be able to charge a toll. And sanctions will be lifted, and they will be able to have a civilian nuclear program. In exchange for this, they will give up their claim or desire for any nuclear weapons. Their ballistic missile program will be curtailed, and they vow not to support terrorist proxies like Hamas or Hezbollah. President Trump says all of his military objectives have been met. The Strait of Hormuz needs to be cleared. Once it's done, President Trump will declare victory and come home. Do you support the president's decision? And ultimately, was this a good deal or is this a bad deal? Joining us now, Dr. Grace, putting liberals in their place. Grace Vuoto, my better half, my wonderful wife, full disclosure. She has been against this war, staunchly, passionately against this war from its very inception. Grace, what was your reaction to Trump's news last night that we have a 2-week ceasefire agreement and maybe even a long-term peace deal? What say you?
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for having me on. You know, I've never been drunk, but this morning I have a hangover, Jeff.
Now, why is that?
Well,
too much celebrating?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think that the president is clearly in over his head right now, and I think he has made a repeated sequence of mistakes, which is weakening our position internationally. I do not think he should have ever posted something like, "Open the effing strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell." I do not want to see our commander-in-chief talking like that. And for good reason, not just because they're words, but because it almost seemed like the whole week he was begging the Iranians to open the straits. So instead of the Iranians begging for a deal, it was really our president who was begging the Iranians to come to the table. And that's a very bad look for us. In addition, I do not want our commander-in-chief to put our beautiful military in the position of having to fire possibly on civilian targets or on civilians themselves, the very people that we got involved in the first place to try to help. This didn't make sense, and it's ultimately deeply dishonorable. I don't want to see our commander-in-chief do that to our military. I mean, one of the things I was thinking is, what if I was a member of the military and I was told then to fire on women and children in Iran? I mean, I would be really in a tremendous amount of angst about that. He threatened to destroy a whole civilization, Jeff. Quote, unquote, a whole civilization will die tonight. never to be brought back again. End of the quote. Now, I'm sorry, Mr. President, you represent the United States of America. This is supposed to be a city upon a hill here. We are a moral, dignified nation that abides by domestic and international law. And we do not threaten to destroy a quote-unquote whole civilization. He crossed the line there, Jeff. And he's got to be called out on it. And the fundamental problem that he has is that he is operating outside of the mandate that he won. He won very clearly to focus on the home front. And he decided, because he got very arrogant, to do something different than that. And that is the crux of his entire problem. He even told us on Wednesday night that it's actually easy to open up the straits. That's what he said at the national address, that we can open the strait. So if we can open the strait, Mr. President, why did you spend a week begging the Iranians to open the strait? If we can open the strait, why did you spend a week begging our allies to do it? And we have been humiliated internationally this week, Jeff. Our allies told him to go fly a kite. They said, no, you do it. And he spent the whole week threatening, blustering, deadline after deadline after deadline, which now doesn't really mean anything. We're on deadline number 5 now. So I have a hangover because I just really wish this whole week didn't happen.
Grace, what do you say to the argument? Number one, okay, it was, it was dire. It was almost apocalyptic like rhetoric that he used about, a whole civilization will die tonight, and never to be brought back again. But it got the mullahs to the table. It worked. It scared the living daylights out of them. It was psychological warfare, and they came to the table, and now they've agreed to a ceasefire, and now potentially an end to the war. So you may not like it. Tucker Carlson may not like it. Others may not like it, but it's effective. It works. Number one. Number two, you saw the images. I couldn't believe it. The mullahs sent children, literally children, teenagers, kids, women. You saw them covered head to toe in bridge after bridge after bridge. They formed a human chain around every power plant in Iran in the lead up to the deadline yesterday. They used their own people as potential human shields, including 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, basically daring Trump, you bomb us, you're going to be killing innocent women and children that we sent there, that the mullahs sent there, in order to try to implicate Trump as a war criminal. And so you're saying, well, he's got no credibility now because he pulled back from the brink. Well, had he killed those women and children, with all due respect, you'd be one of the first ones saying the president killed women and children. He committed war crimes. So he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. What do you say to those two arguments?
It's completely wrong. I never wanted him to ever threaten civilian targets. That's not what our military tradition is about. We abide by the rules of international law. So this is an illegal war to begin with, and he doesn't have the support of the American people. He's operating outside of the mandate of our democracy, and he didn't get authority from Congress. It's illegal every step of the way, and he's putting our military in a really difficult position, and that's where my heart is. My heart is with them. And I think he's not honoring his role as our commander-in-chief according to the traditions of this incredible nation that is supposed to be a city upon a hill in all of our endeavors. I think he's just crossed the huge line here. And you say this is a win? Are you kidding me? When he was running for office, we were going to be the peace brokers between, say, Gaza, the Palestinians and Israel. We were the peace brokers. We were going to be the peace brokers between Russia and Ukraine. Look at our position now. Pakistan is the peace broker of a deal between the United States and the mullahs. This is humiliating, Jeff.
Grace, what do you make now of if the deal is made in Pakistan, in Islamabad, has Iran, who has won this war? Iran or the United States? Trump or the mullahs?
Means what to do, and they're running circles around him because the Russians have told them something important. When he posts a threat on social media, ignore it. He's not going to abide by that. So just wait him out. He only does actions. He likes actions by surprise. So look at his psychology. When he, captured Maduro, he didn't post about it first. He went out ahead and did it. So he likes to act in surprise. If he's posting, just ignore him. So they are guiding the Iranians on what to do. And it is now in the Iranian and Russian interest to just stretch this out. You know how many jokes I could make with this question? What do you call a ceasefire in the Middle East, Jeff? What do you call a ceasefire in the Middle East?
What do you call it?
A bathroom break? Time for a snack between bombs? I mean, what do you call a ceasefire in the Middle East? How many times have we talked about, there's going to be a ceasefire in the Middle East? It's almost an oxymoron. So, listen, I don't believe anything that's being said on any side. All I see is that we have the President of the United States that is in over his head, and he does not know what to do because from the start he did not behave in an ethical, moral manner according to the mandate that the people gave him. He exceeded the mandate. He exceeded our democratic laws and rules, and he's in a whole lot of trouble right now that he just can't seem to get out of.
All right, Grace, I need you to answer my question. 30 seconds. Literally 30 seconds. Who do you think has come out on top? Iran or Trump? The Ayatollahs or the United States?
Sadly, right now, the mullahs are in the driver's seat, and so are the Russians.
Okay, leave outside the Russians. Why? Why are the Iranians the winner in this?
Well, they're the winners because they get to keep their regime, they get to continue to oppress the people, and they're going to be richer than ever, and they get to control the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, not only that, it looks like the sanctions are going to be lifted. They're going to almost be elevated back into the international community. How is that a win for us?
Interesting. Okay, Grace, not happy with Trump. Not happy with the war, the way the war was fought, the execution of the war, the end game of the war. Okay, more news. News is just breaking all the time now on the ceasefire and on the peace negotiations that will take place in a couple days in Pakistan, or as Obama liked to call it, Pakistan. In Iran, there are huge protests against the regime. Listen to this. For even signing a ceasefire or agreeing to a ceasefire. They're burning American flags. They're burning Israeli flags. They are urging the mullahs to reject the ceasefire, to reject any deal, and to just continue the war against the United States. So that's what's happening in Iran. Here on the political home front, Lindsey Graham, but now it's other war hawks within the Republican Party, are now coming out against the ceasefire, telling the president that he needs to, quote unquote, finish the job, that they find the ceasefire unacceptable, that it concedes too much to Iran, that that he needs to go all the way and have the U.S. military claim the Strait of Hormuz or take it back, and to finish it by toppling the Ayatollahs. So Trump now is starting to get attacked on his right flank within his own party. Now, we'll see how big the opposition is or the revolt is, but clearly now it's not just Democrats that are now complaining about the war. Now it's many of the hawks who initially supported him are now saying this falls short, it's too little, and that they want him to reconsider, end the ceasefire, and prosecute the war to the finish, to the end. 617-266-6868. Anthony in Michigan. Thanks for holding, Anthony, and welcome.
Dr. Kuhner, it sounds like all the no king organizers are even affecting the Iranians here. Oh, my gosh.
Anthony, how do you feel about everything? Were you surprised at the ceasefire, and did Trump make the right move?
It's one of these things, Jeff, where it's a half a loaf, but let me explain. I think there's a lot of good here. First of all, isn't it interesting that President number 47 is stopping a 47-year war since they declared war on us in, what was it, 1979?
That's right.
I look back on all the women that have been injured by the radical lunatics there, the acid on the face, etc. Was this worth it? We'll see, because we still haven't gotten rid of these schmucks. So I want to pose something to you. 60% enriched uranium. Do you know where we use it right now? In the country?
No.
It's in our reactors, in our subs, and our carriers, Jeff. And if we had a nuclear power industry that could use that dense material, you wouldn't have to refuel like in 20 or 30 years. Now, can our plants be retrofitted to that? That's a question for someone in the audience that's in the nuclear power industry. But did you know after the Soviet Union collapsed, we hired all their nuclear engineers. So where am I going with this? So that they wouldn't, work for despots like the Iranians. We have an opportunity here to hire their nuclear engineers for civilian use, whether it's here or there, because the Middle East is going nuclear. Dubai's already got a 1,000-megawatt plant because it's more cost-effective for them to produce their electricity via nuclear power and sell the oil and natural gas rather than use it to create electricity for their populace. So there's something that could go on here that's quite positive. And, I don't know if that will occur. I don't know if even the Trump administration thought about that. But I've been saying this for a long time. There's an opportunity here. And I know I'm out there with this thought, but it has to be considered.
Well, Anthony, look, we don't want them to reconstitute their nuclear program. I agree with you. And I don't trust them. And I don't think the administration should trust them. So to me, to be honest, it's not a deal or a settlement that's going to end, say, Iran's nuclear ambitions. It was our military campaign. And whatever you think about it, whether you're for or against it, the fact of the matter is it was the bombing last year, Operation Midnight Hammer, now Operation Epic Fury. That's what's obliterated their nuclear program. That's what's obliterated, or at least substantially decimated and degraded, their ballistic missile program. So all of the wins that Trump is rightly touting, look, Iran's ability to wage war has been decimated. There's no question. That's not going to come from a peace deal. That came from our incredible military that ran honestly and presided over one of the most spectacular, efficient, impressive military campaigns in the history of war. And if we can start plucking some of these scientists and have them work for us or have them work in Europe or whatever to further undermine the regime, I am all for it. But I think there's no question we can't trust anything the Ayatollahs or the mullahs say or anything they sign. So we better make sure, if we do go forward with this, that we have a verification team and a verification process, that if they do break any promise or start backsliding, the sanctions come on right away, and whatever other measures you have to take. 617-266-6868 is the number. Sandy and I were just talking off air, and I thought she made a very good point. Because I said to her, I don't trust Iran. I just don't. I don't trust the mullahs. I don't trust the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. I don't trust this regime. I don't trust them with anything, never mind with a ceasefire or a more permanent peace deal. And she said to me, I don't trust them either. And so maybe we should just keep all our forces there, and not, let's say they do sign a deal in Pakistan, say next week or whatever. It's all formalized and consummated, as Trump said on Truth Social. I would keep them there for a while, even after the deal is signed. Because, it won't take much for them to start violating the deal, backsliding on the deal, we said, "Oh, really? We interpreted it like this. You interpret it like that." Well, how do you define a nuclear weapon? How do you define enrichment? I mean, I could see them playing these games. And so I'm thinking, how long will it take before they start breaking their promises? So rather than send all the Navy ships and all our troops and everything that we've amassed, send it all the way back here, and then to send them back again, Sandy and I were like, yeah, let's just keep them there for a while. Let's not come home too soon. Trust, as Reagan said, trust but verify. With the mullahs, don't trust and verify like hell. Agree, disagree. Bob in Plymouth. Thanks for holding, Bob, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi,
Appreciate taking my call. Hey, you just touched on what I was calling about. It seems like you have ESP today, but I'm wondering how long our troops are going to sit off the coast there in the Mediterranean with all these ships and planes, and how long is that going to last?
Well, I hope it lasts for at least a couple of months. I hope. But, we do have, look, to be fair, Bob, Trump's a very smart man. He's surrounded by very capable people. They're not just going to blindly trust, the mullahs. We have satellites. We're going to have inspection teams. Obviously, Israel is also there as our eyes and ears on the ground. And we have bases nearby. So we're going to be watching and monitoring anything they agree to in terms of the deal. But as for the massive force that we've amassed there, I would keep them for a while as a deterrent. Let them know, look, if we need to bomb you again, we will. I mean, look, and my position on the war. But, to keep them in line so we can keep this peace, a peace deal going and viable, they're going to have to realize, no, you don't think you're in the clear just because now we have a piece of paper. And look, Bob, I got to tell you, in all honesty, there's something about giving them a right to toll and that $500 billion a year, every year. That's a lot of money for the Ayatollahs. That's a lot of money for that regime to do a lot of mischief. They don't care about their own people. They want to be the dominant power in that region. They just do. And they're going to be angry at us for having killed the Ayatollah, for having decapitated much of their leadership. I think they're going to want revenge. They're going to want retaliation. I bet you secretly, if you were to speak to them in their living room, I'm telling you what they're saying. I guarantee you this is what they're saying. Why do you think the Americans have never bombed North Korea? Because the North Koreans have nukes. If we had a nuke, they would never bomb us. This would never have happened. So now I think they're going to redouble, even triple their effort to try in a clandestine way to get the bomb. And as one, texter put it maybe 2 hours ago, he goes, now with that kind of cash, sanctions relief, lift all sanctions. You know how much oil Iran can sell on the international market? You have a toll of $1 a barrel, which is what they and Trump are talking about. You're going to be looking at trillions of dollars. Pakistan will sell them a nuclear weapon. The Chinese, the Russians would be happy to sell them a nuclear weapon. So forget making one. They could just buy one with a perfectly good delivery system. Then what do we do? So what I preferred, was what we had before the war, which is maximum pressure on the regime, economic pressure, diplomatic pressure. Their oil was sanctioned. They could barely sell anything. They were obviously not in control of the strait. We had our boot right on their neck. And people say, well, okay, Jeff, but the imminent threat. Let's just argue for the sake of argument. There was again an imminent threat. Then I would have just done another midnight hammer. If you're going to bomb, just do a midnight hammer. So fine, eliminate the threat again. And then I understand the counter argument, but it's the mullahs, get rid of the regime. But once you get into a regime change war, then it's the whole freaking country. You see, now it's a big war. It's a large war. It's an expensive war. It's a costly war. And Trump had a very limited time to win it because of the midterms and the political situation and the price of gas and the price of energy. And so he had to win it super quick. It's very hard to defeat a large country like Iran, to be fair to them, with the ballistic missiles they had, with the military they have, with the resources they have, in 4 to 6 weeks, unless you're willing to put a lot of ground troops, which we weren't. So Trump really, he was put almost in an impossible situation. And so now, in a way, I think financially, economically, this is what scares me, if you want to know the truth. Financially, economically, they're going to have more money now than they've ever had in 47 years. And do I trust them to use the money to rebuild their bridges and the roads and their infrastructure and schools and hospitals or whatever, collateral damage that was, in the war that was damaged by our bombing? No. I mean, they'll get some of that. But they're going to say, no, now we're going to build the most powerful military in the Middle East. And remember, they have 100 million Persians. 100 million. Not 8, 9 million like Israel. Not 20, 30, 40 million like other countries in that area. 100 million. With, some of the brightest minds in the world. The Persians are a high culture, high intelligent people. They've produced phenomenal engineers and scientists and physicists. I mean, they're a talented people. They just are. That's a lot of money. Bob, that's a lot of money. Final word to you. Agree, disagree?
The thing that I was thinking about yesterday, watching all those women and children outside that power plant, that just verifies the fact that they have no regard for the people in their country. I mean, it was so obvious, and they don't care. If those people got killed, it would be, what's next? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you're right. Well, no, they're barbaric. They're savages.
Yeah.
You're truly dealing with people with a 7th century medieval mentality. In fact, to be honest, you want to see how sick they are? I'm telling you, if you were to sit them down and say, how could you send those innocent women and children out there? They were like 5, 6, 7-year-old kids on the bridge. In every bridge in the country, every power plant has human shields. He would look at you with a straight face and say, what are you talking about? I'm giving him the gift of martyrdom. They're going to go straight to heaven. What's the matter with you? Like, in other words, not only is it not barbaric, really, you would say, like, you should be thanking me. That's it's a different world. It's a different mentality. They're just so wired differently than we are. And so to me, the thought of them having all of this cash. So anyway, Bob, thank you very much for that call. Ronnie in Boston. Thanks for holding, Ronnie, and welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for taking the call, Jeff. Good morning, Kuhner Country.
Good morning, Ronnie. Nice to hear from you, my friend.
Oh, nice to be heard, Jeff. I just want to say right up front that one of the reasons that I think MAGA is so powerful is that we're not a cult like our leftist counterparts where you unconditionally agree with everything, or you cease to be. So I've always appreciated the discussion about this. But I want to tell you why I fundamentally disagree with a lot of things being said. I think that when you say, Trump promised regime change, we didn't get regime change. I think it's a little disingenuous with all due respect, and I'll tell you why. Because saying that implies that the same leadership that was in Iran before this war is the same leadership now. And that's simply not the case. We have wiped out the former regime, and that's why we need Pakistan, because we're speaking to people for the very, very first time. That's how deeply Trump wiped out the previous regime. So there has been a regime change. And, if you're going to say, well, yeah, but they're mullahs.
Ronnie, can you hang on? I really want, it's a very interesting point. I'm up against a hard break. We're going to come right back to you. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let's go right back to Ronnie in Boston. Ronnie, please pick up where you left off.
First of all, Jeff, as always, thank you so much for holding me over. It's so great when you do this. But yeah, we have had a regime change. It'd be the same thing. Let's say hypothetically, Jeff, the entire Trump administration was replaced tomorrow with a different group of people. It would be a regime change. And you can't say that it isn't just because the new people that replaced them are also Republicans. It would still be a regime change. Secondly, Trump spoke to the mullahs in a language that they understand. 7th century apocalyptic rhetoric. He spoke to his enemies in the only language they understand and the only language that they've been broadcasting to the world for 47 years. And it worked. And to say that Trump is an embarrassment on the foreign policy stage because of Ukraine, I mean, let's be honest. The reason there's no peace in Ukraine and Russia is because Zelensky and Putin don't want it. They don't want it. The Trump administration has done everything humanly possible under the sun to bring those two to the table for a peace agreement. But both sides want war. And there's nothing any world leader can do when both sides want war. And finally, this was being hyped out at the onset as a forever war. And here we are. And when all this is said and done, in 60 days, Jeff, in 60 days, all of the senior leadership of the Iranian regime wiped out, all of their military wiped out, and a complete fundamental political shift in the Middle East where Iran is no longer a threat to their neighbors. They're going to be spending the next years rebuilding their country. They've got way bigger things to worry about than America and Israel moving forward. And so, when you look at how shortly, in such a brief time frame, such a fundamental shift has taken place, I think what President Trump has done is incredibly remarkable, especially when you add in Maduro being captured, the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, and what it has cost us. And that's the final thing, Jeff. For people, obsessing over what this war has cost us, granted, I admit this is speculation on my part, but I believe that NATO is going to be picking up a lot of the cost of that because NATO knows that Trump is deadly serious about leaving it. Trump correctly understands that all of NATO's power doesn't come from Europe. It comes from us. And the only way they're going to be able to get themselves back into Trump's good graces is by putting up a lot of money to offset the cost of this when they tucked their tails and ran when we asked for help. So I think what Trump has done is absolutely incredible. He brought this to a conclusion in an extremely short time frame. I mean, it's amazing, Jeff, but that's just how I feel about it.
Ronnie, what do you say to those, and there are many in the Republican Party, who are saying that they're skeptical that this ceasefire is going to hold, that the Iranians are going to break the ceasefire or violate it, and that their strategy now is just delay and obfuscate, and then eventually we go home and they regain control of the Strait of Hormuz, and then the money just keeps pouring in and they're able to rebuild. In other words, don't trust the mullahs. This ceasefire cannot and will not last. What say you?
I would say that if Trump listened to these neocon war hawks like the Lindsey Grahams and the Keens, we would get another forever war, Jeff. We would get another 20, 30-year war in the Middle East if he did listen to them. But he's not listening to them. And of course Iran can't be trusted at face value. Of course they can't. And of course Trump knows that, which is why there are going to be mechanisms in place to verify. There will be oversight of the extraction of that uranium. There will be oversight of their military capabilities. But I am delighted that Trump is ignoring the war hawks and the neocons, the Boltons, the Grahams, because that's how we get forever wars, Jeff, not 60-day wars.
Ronnie, as always, thank you very much for that call. Really an interesting perspective. And honestly, you should be working for Trump's communications team. because you're doing a better job defending him than some of his own people are. Jake in Gloucester. Jake, I hate to do this to you. 1 minute left in the show. Go.
Jeff, I want to second what Ronnie just said. I usually agree with Grace, but for the past 2 weeks, as you can tell, Grace's anti-Trump bias has shown the past 2 weeks. So I disagree with just about everything Grace said. No other president has done not 1/10, not 1/100, not 1,000th of what this president has done to Iran. He set them back for years. What could he do? You're dealing with a disgusting regime. So Trump did a phenomenal job, and all those criticizing him have no idea what they're talking about. And that figure you mentioned on the Strait of Hormuz, Jeff, is not accurate. It's nowhere near that amount. So let's wait until all the figures come out, and Iran is decimated. Decimated. Ronnie is absolutely right, and Grace is absolutely wrong. And I love Grace, but she is 100% wrong today, Jeff.
Jake, thank you so much for that call, my friend. God bless you. Okay, as you can tell, audience has been split. It started split. It's ending split. But anyway, look, we're going to see what's going to happen over the next couple of days. Ceasefire for now, fragile, but it is holding.